Welcome back to Post-Millennium Renaissance. Today is the follow-up to the Hubs standard video. And I want to quick mention, when I first set out to figure out which rear hub was stronger, 148 or 157, and by how much, I sat down and searched it on a search engine, expecting to find the answer relatively quick. And as we know, that information was not there. I found assertions of strength and stiffness, but I found no receipts, and that has led me on this journey. Before you dismiss this and say 148 hubs are just fine, please keep in mind that just a few years ago, it was still conventional wisdom that longer cranks meant more power and more leverage. Obviously, we know better now. We have the research to back it up. The reason the industry has evolved in this manner is because those studies on power generation and speed were conducted, and more importantly, they were publicly available and transparently published. I guarantee you're going to learn something today about hubs, and I'm going to start with this. If you're a mountain biker riding a modern trail enduro bike or even an e-bike, very good chance your front wheel is stronger than your rear wheel. Let me explain why. Almost all of the bikes in those categories run what is called standard boost. 15 by 110 in the front, 12 by 148 in the back. Again, standard boost, almost ubiquitous. Nearly every manufacturer runs these. Using the specs on Chris King's mountain hubs, the specific width difference in the hub flanges is 3.3 millimeters. Again, 3.3 millimeters wider in the front than the back, and that's why your front wheel is stronger than the back. We're going to dig more into that hub flange width in a moment. Generally speaking, the rear wheel is assumed to take more abuse than the front. This article on your screen focuses on road and gravel riding, and in the testing that Hunt does, they assume that between 55 and 60% of the rider's weight falls upon the rear wheel. So let's get back to rear hub standards, which is the focus of the video today. While the difference in total width between the two hubs, 148 and 157, is 9 millimeters, the difference in flange width between the two, when you use Chris King as your reference, is 8.8 millimeters. But again, how much stronger is 157 over 148? Nobody is arguing that 148 hubs are not up for the task. They're ubiquitous in the mountain bike space. However, with the increasing frequency we're seeing 50 to 60 pound e-bikes, I wonder why there's not more of a curiosity on this. Just a few years ago in the industry, it was speculated that 157 hubs would find a home in the more aggressive enduro space and even in the e-bike space. The mountain biking industry is always innovating. I wonder if there's aspects of this existing standard that warrant a closer look. But first, let's do the obligatory Ask AI. And while we're on the subject of AI, I named the squirrel Walliver. So here's what a proper study would look like. I'm going to oversimplify. Essentially, you'd build two wheels. Everything's the same on the spokes and rim, except the hub standards are, of course, the 148 and the 157. And then you'd subject them to testing, both in the lab and in the field. While I cannot find a lab or field test that does this comparison, I was able to find a study from 2016 that utilizes a mathematical framework to quantify the strength and stiffness of a bicycle wheel. So let's take a look at the conclusion on page 10 and 11 of this study. The paper and researchers point out the significance of what they call the cone angle. The cone angle is increased when the hub flange that we talked about becomes wider. The exact quote is on your screen, and I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit. Even a modest increase in hub flange width can increase the stiffness and buckling tension dramatically, while having a negligible effect on radial compliance. This paper has very big implications for the potential benefits of a 157 hub in mountain biking. The wider hub flange that we talked about has big implications on lateral strength and stiffness and a very muted effect on radial compliance. I reached out to the lead author, Matt Ford, to clarify a few things and make sure I wasn't making assumptions that were incorrect. He confirmed, again, that radial stiffness and radial compliance are the inverse of one another. So that's why I'm using stiffness and compliance relatively interchangeably. He said, however, the vast majority of compliance in a mountain bike system is going to come from the suspension and tire, not from the rim or wheel. The buckling of the wheel, as he refers to in the paper, is when a wheel fails or when it breaks. Take a look at that blue arrow in this graphic. If an impact hits the bike while riding and wants to collapse it, the wheel will buckle either by collapsing to the left or collapsing to the right, and that will get your tacoed wheel. Matt said that it's for this reason that an adequately lateral stiff wheel will have the ability to resist that collapse, and therefore that lateral stiffness becomes a proxy for strength in this application. Matt Ford built a wheel simulator online, and I'm going to take you through an example where I compare side by side a 148 wheel to a 157 wheel. Let's take a look. A quick lay of the land here. On the left side, I have a browser window with the 148 specifications input in here on the left, and I've got I'm using Chris King's here. So this 2436 rounded to the nearest millimeter, of course. And over here, I've got the 157. Again, same story. Everything's rounded to on the drive side and non-drive side to the nearest millimeter. Flange diameter is the same on both standards, of course. And I'm going to just take you through these tabs to show you that everything's the same. This tab is the same. We already looked at hubs, so the spokes are a little different. What I did is I used the spoke tension of 105, and it automatically chose the non-drive spoke tension. So when I move this, that changes. So again, that's a difference, but it's not something I have control of. Because there's asymmetry in that, again, it's just going to calculate that based on predefined, I call it calculations. But again, I'm attempting to just compare apples to apples here. So now we're going to look at forces. And you can see what I tried to do here is this bottom one with the 2°, I just have that being just simply the weight of the rider. So I'm assuming a 75 kilogram rider. And I'm imagining, let's say they hit something in front of them on the trail at a 45-degree angle. So that's this a little bit bigger motion right here. And again, I'm attempting to just kind of calculate one standard to the other, because as we know, that hub, again, based on that study from 2016, that hub flange width here is really where a lot of the magic happens. So I'm going to go ahead and click calculate on each side. And just like his conclusion in that paper mentioned, I want to just talk about stiffness up here. So the radial stiffness, which could be rephrased as radial compliance, stays very close, just a little over 2,000 in both of these. And then the lateral stiffness, again, that when a wheel is going to buckle, the rim has to either go too far to the left or too far to the right. I'm not talking a little bit out of true, but the picture of tacoed wheel, it's going to go obviously way too far. And these numbers change a lot. Again, going back to the conclusion of that paper, these are very big differences here. So that lateral stiffness, that lateral strength, and what Matt believes can be used as a proxy for wheel strength overall, increases a lot. Again, the only difference here is this the flange width to the center of the rim. Okay, so now let's take a look at this. Lateral force it takes to buckle the spokes. Looks like about 27 over here on the 148 hub. Again, this is the much more common standard. And then over here on the right, the 157, the lateral force to buckle it is 53.4. So on a percentage basis, you're looking at a 65.6% difference in lateral force to buckle the spokes. So again, I'm comparing this right here to this right here. So again, there's the standards right here, and there's the standards right here. So Matt's paper from 2016 and his online wheel simulator tell me that perhaps the mountain bike industry has more information to flesh out from these two hub standards than we know today. I think this warrants a very closer look using field and lab testing. We're going to take a look at a couple of reviews of the DaVinci Troy. For the last 5 or so years, the DaVinci Troy trail bike with about 140 millimeters of rear travel has been running the 157 hub standard, the wider one we've been talking about. So DaVinci decided to go back to the 148 hub on their newly redesigned Troy that they're releasing for the 2025 model year. The first review we're going to look at is from November 2024. Also, this new bike sees the Troy moving to 148 millimeter axle spacing and away from 157. This seems like a step in the right direction to us. Next quote, I found this bike to be one of the more flexier bikes on test. Now let's take a look at the October 2018 review. The quote from the reviewer says, it's a stiff, stout bike that feels best once it's up to speed. I want to note that the word flex does not appear in the review. So I called DaVinci and asked if this decision to change from 157 to 148 was based on stiffness or strength or any performance metric. And the answer I got surprised me. They said that it was a decision that they made because of compatibility and availability of parts. I do plan to follow up on this video, so please stay tuned. Thank you for watching Post-Millennium Renaissance. .157 is often ridiculed as a new standard. It actually predates the 148 standard boost standard. God damn.